if I could actually just accept my body as it is right now. And what that means is like step out of resistance from it. And from this place of not trying to resist it, if I wasn't trying to fight it, now how am I in relationship to it?
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Uncovery podcast. My name is Maddie, and this week it is a bit of a timely episode. And although I would love to claim to be a genius that plans how this all works, it seems more like the universe is kind of doing me a little bit of a favor and paralleling things that are happening in the real world with who I'm speaking to on the podcast. So you've seen in the title, we're going to be talking about our bodies and body acceptance and body image. And it's something that I am, going through in real time and a bit in the weeds with as sort of my body begins to change and continues changing in recovery. And in addition to that, I actually had a friend reach out the other week and was really struggling with body image and having a hard time seeing herself in photos and things like that. And I was like, I've got good news for you. I've got a lady coming on the podcast to talk about just that. So we're going to dive in shortly. But there was a couple things that happened via the Instagram last week. And one was when I posted the last Little Bites Instagram post, and I used this kind of background photo, and this photo had been taken, several months ago now, but I'm looking at it and I'm feeling so embarrassed. I'm feeling like ashamed. I'm feeling really weird about it because I'm like, oh, look at like your little arms. Like those aren't real arms. That like I had no idea at the time how weird it looked or how bad I now think it looked or whatever. And it was just this really strange experience of looking back and already feeling like that's not okay. Then that wasn't okay. Those aren't real arms. And that reminded me of this time where I was on a flight to Las Vegas for a bachelorette party, and the bride was sitting next to me on the plane, and we were going down. We were so excited, and I don't even know what I was wearing, but you could see sort of maybe like the top of my legs. And this is at a time where I was extremely not well. But she said something kind of like, oh, like those aren't even like, look at your little legs. Like those aren't even real legs. And at the time I was like, oh, cause I have small legs, like great. But it's this, those aren't even real. Like those aren't even real. That's not how like it's supposed to be. So that was really interesting to me. How we can like look back and all of a sudden be very aware that the way that we were and the things we were doing were completely out to lunch. No pun intended. But yeah, so that was something that kind of, it was weird. It struck me because it was only several months ago that picture that I posted was taken, and I'm already like, oof, I'm cringing. So also via social media, I had posted a story about, trying to shrink into dresses because of the Kim Kardashian Met Gala thing. And I'd posted a story because a memory had come to mind where I actually realized that like 3 days before my high school prom or graduation, the party one, I was drinking like a lot of water in an effort to, I don't even know, feel better in my dress. And I had no concept of dieting by that point. Like I still wasn't doing any of the weird restricting that I would go on to do, probably about a year later or so. But I was already like trying to chug water as if this was something that was going to help me with my dress. And it's so pervasive and weird, the things that we either absorb or we see somewhere and then we decide to do, even without having like an eating disorder mindset or, even what I really thought. I didn't think I had a, body image issue even at that point, but trying to get yourself to do things to be in clothes is just so bizarre. And so when I posted that story, because it makes me immensely sad for like past Maddie, as many things do. But I got a message from another friend, and I'm going to just read it. And I asked for her permission if I could share this, because I'm curious to see if this is an experience that others have had. And unfortunately, I believe it probably is. So here's the message. When I went shopping for my wedding dress, the woman asked me if I wanted to size down because, quote, most women lose weight for the wedding day, unquote. I told her no, that I was buying the dress to fit my body. They ordered the smaller size anyway, and I cried when it arrived and it didn't fit me. I thought they had ordered the size I wanted. If not for my mom, who insisted the dress was incorrect, I never would have known. My mom had me try on the sample dress, the size that I wanted, and it fit perfectly. They apologized profusely, but kind of ruined the moment and the dress for me. Ended up buying a different dress altogether after that. Ugh. And that is like that. So if that has happened to other people, like comment or post or something, because like that is next level outrageous to do something like that. And that broke my heart. But it's just, more evidence of this like really toxic narrative that we have, that everybody must want to shrink. Certainly everybody wants to shrink. So we're actually going to make this decision for you to size down for your wedding day. Like that's so gross. So thank you, friend, for sharing your experience. And I'm certain that, something similar or, even that exact thing has probably happened to someone else. But okay, today, to help us with these struggles, we have Kristina Bruce as a guest. So Kristina, as a body acceptance coach, she specializes in helping women break free from dieting and negative body image. Calling upon her training as a certified integrative life coach, as well as education in health studies, sociology, yoga, meditation, and self-inquiry methodologies, Kristina works with clients to help them reconnect to their deeper selves so they can live empowering lives in the bodies they have. And it sounds like some of us could really use a dose of this. And so without further ado, I bring you Kristina Bruce. Kristina Bruce, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
The topic that we're talking about today, it's so interesting to me how things that are happening in the real world for me parallel with who my guests are going to be. And, I had a friend just the other week that was really struggling with seeing photos of herself. And for me, I'm, in eating disorder recovery, and I'm in this weird in-between phase of like, my body is changing, I'm changing, but I'm not done yet. And what I'm noticing as a result is that I have absolutely no concept of my body in space, what my size is, how far along I am. And it's totally destabilizing. And I think we're going to unpack so much of this. But it's really strange to not know how you look and to have this really strange relationship with our bodies. And so right off the top, tell me a little bit about what you do and how you got into this space.
So I'm a body acceptance coach. And so I work with people who have had a long history of trying to essentially suppress their weight. So usually that's through just regular run-of-the-mill dieting. People, I often work with clients too who have had a history with eating disorders. So it's really helping people who are now at a place where they're able to start to, stabilized, and they're able to start to do the work on just really accepting this body that they're in right now, starting to relate to it differently, starting to, question and debunk a lot of the beliefs that we've been conditioned with growing up in our society of what, a body is, what an attractive body looks like, how our bodies are supposed to be, and then really just taking that journey back home to ourselves so that we're led by our hearts and our intuition. And so how I got into this work was through my own personal, struggles. Basically, I'd say growing up, I was always in an average sized body. So I was not thin, I wasn't large, I was just kind of average. And I was always very active in sports and extracurriculars. So thankfully I managed to kind of get through high school without being super focused on my how my body looked and trying to control the weight. I was just too busy being involved in other things, which was great. I love like being active, so I was really active, but it wasn't until I graduated university and I was really like out on my own in the world for the first time that I started to fixate on my weight. And for me, it was always, never feeling good enough, never feeling like I was. A lot of it had to do with a lot of the women in my family are in larger bodies, and they always admired and praised people who were in thin bodies. And I never received that praise. And so I always felt like I was lacking. And really, it was like yearning for that love. And I also wanted attention from the opposite sex because I was, single, and I didn't get as much of it when I was in the body that I was in. So I worked on losing weight and I got a lot of attention. I saw the change in how particularly guys treated me. I got a lot more attention from them. I felt better because I was feeling like I was accomplishing something. I finally was able to experience what I wanted in this body. The downside to that was, as much as there was a lot, that I was living and excited and gaining from that, it also then instilled in me a sense of fear because I said, well, now I can't gain this weight. So, I've got to keep it down because then otherwise I'm going to lose all of this newfound admiration that I've been receiving from people. So that was always a focus for me, was to keep my weight down. Now, this happened alongside me also getting involved in yoga. I became a yoga teacher. I've always been involved in health and wellness. So I was interested in spiritual development and personal development. This was going on, I'd say, for about, 10 years that I was doing this. And I finally got to a point where I ended up meeting my then boyfriend, now husband, and he moved in with me. And it was at that point that I was really able to see how much time I was spending on needing to keep my weight down. So that would be time I was spending exercising. I also got to see how obsessed I really was about managing my portion intake, because now that I was living with somebody, I would be sharing meals with them. And I saw how concerned I was that if, he was making dinner and he would give me more of what I thought, I would allow myself, I would be really upset by it. So when I started to relax a little bit, meaning wanting to actually spend time with him. So maybe I would skip a workout and instead watch like a show with him or spend time with him. The weight started to creep on, and that really freaked me out. So I doubled down and I went even harder on managing my weight, and I became even more obsessed, and I was weighing myself every day, and it just was not a good situation. And my husband would say that he would dread me going into the bathroom because he knew that I would weigh myself, and he never knew what mood I would be in when I came out. And he said that it was kind of like walking on eggshells around me. It was not a healthy state to be in. Yeah. So around this time, throughout this, I ended up doing a life coaching training that was kind of happening at the same time. And I'd come across intuitive eating, and I came across and I said, well, this sounds good, but I was still way too scared to actually let go because I knew that if I did, I would gain weight. So it took about a year for that seed to be planted. And then I learned about health at every size. And so, these seeds were being planted. And then I kind of hit what I would call like my diet bottom. I had signed up to go on this super restrictive diet that's, has a book out, and I mean, it's popular, but it's really like a sanctioned eating disorder. And the night before I was set to start this program, I just broke down and I just said, like sobbing, and I said, like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I don't want this to be my life. And it was at that moment that I just kind of went cold turkey and said, I'm done. Like, I'm throwing out my scale. I'm not weighing myself anymore, and I'm not dieting. I'm not suppressing my weight anymore. And that really started, a several year long journey that, I'm still continuing on. This is my new path now of working on recovering from dieting, the weight that needed to be restored, and learning how to accept my body and myself. And it, was very difficult in the beginning. It was very emotional. There was a lot of deep work that needed to be done. But now I see that it's really a path to freedom, and it's really a much more healthier place that I'm at. Weight is no longer the focus anymore. And it just so happened that I thought, this is what I need to be coaching people on.
Yeah.
Now I have my, my experience. And so it really, everything kind of merged with everything that I've learned through yoga and meditation and self-inquiry methodologies, all of my, continuing spiritual and personal development, I bring into my body acceptance work that I do with clients, and that I, continue to do with myself, because I see that that's really where the work is. It's finding the value and the security and the safety within ourselves, regardless of what our body is doing and what's happening around us.
Oh, that's so incredible to hear. And I mean, we all kind of go through these different journeys, and it's so interesting how everything that you've been through and, even the different sort of trainings that you've done all kind of accumulate into this, this is my path. And what's really interesting is that, your own journey with it continues. And you say that, and it's because you're going to have this body forever, and it's going to change forever. And so you're always going to have to, on some level, do this work, maybe not in such extremes as when you're hitting rock bottom and really needing to do that on off, I'm done with this, but that continued relationship with your own body is so intrinsic. And I want to kind of ask you, because I don't know that everybody that will be listening will really know some of the terminology, but what is body image and what is body acceptance?
So I can share it in how I personally understand it and how I view it. I don't have like a dictionary definition of it, but some people might have a slightly different view. To me, body image is really like how we view our body. It's I don't want to say it's like an objectification of our body, but sometimes it kind of is, because when we are looking at ourselves like in photos or in the mirror, we are often objectifying our body. We're separating ourselves from it. So it can be like how we look at and how we see our body. But I see it also too as like, yeah, like it's really like our image that we have of ourselves, but also how we relate to it too. So I hope I'm explaining that clearly.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really interesting the way that you say that it's objectification from yourself, really, even though in so many cases there's nothing objective about the view at all. That subjectivity of how we judge it comes into play as well.
Yeah. And it really is it really is our own image that we have of ourselves. And I also think like it ties into then what we make the image that we hold or that we think of our body, what we make it mean about ourselves. So it's the meaning that we also attach to it that I would say is important, and our relationship to that, image that we have. And then body acceptance. So the best way to look at it is kind of what it's not. So what we're often in is resistance to our bodies. So more often than not, we don't like something about our bodies. We're always trying to change our bodies. If our body feels a certain way that we don't like that day, we make it wrong or bad, and we want to change it. So body acceptance instead is saying, okay, if I could actually just accept my body as it is right now. And what that means is like step out of resistance from it. So stop trying to fight what the current situation is, and coming into a place of surrender to where I am in my body right now, how it is. And from this place of not trying to resist it, if I wasn't trying to fight it, now how am I in relationship to it? What action am I taking or not taking from this place of acceptance? And a lot of people really don't like the term acceptance because they equate it to giving up, or they
Mm.
equate it to like, oh, well, now I'm just never going to do anything like good for myself or whatever. That's not what it is. And that's actually, I find that's almost kind of a form of resistance too, because
Yeah.
when we truly are in acceptance, we can start to then listen to our body and connect more with our heart. And that guidance is always going to move us to a place that is beneficial for our bodies. It's going to be working with our bodies as a friend to our bodies instead of an enemy to our bodies.
Yes. And so, I mean, when I think about this, and I'm going to ask sort of another terminology question, but this place that we come from that you call resistance, this sort of being at war with our bodies, I see that as one end of a spectrum. And then on the other side, there's sort of been this, I don't know if it's a movement or there's a lot of talk about, body positivity, body love. And I see that as I don't know, the pinnacle or the sort of unattainable maximum goal you can have is to be like really in love with your body. And that seems so unattainable. Is it that body acceptance rests somewhere in between those things? And how do you view body positivity?
Yeah, I would say that yes, it does. Because with if you're having this idea then again of like always loving our body, I think brings in what is possibly a skewed version of what we think love is. So we also kind of have to look at like what is love? And I mean, this gets a little bit deeper. um,
Yes, go there.
but
Yes.
yeah, it's just, I think sometimes we might have these romantic ideas of what love is, and that it's all like frilly and positive and happy and rainbows all the time. But love sometimes is not that. Like love can just be very quiet. Love is sometimes just being with yourself even when you're not feeling good. It doesn't mean that you have to look at yourself and you just see like a shiny image that you're so happy with and you want to hug all the time. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe somebody might get to that some days. Like I'm sure maybe some people do feel that way, but I don't see like that as being the thing that we're trying to work towards. I see it more as a moment to moment relationship to myself. And it's the simple asks of what would it look like? What feels loving in this moment? What would love do in this moment? Because sometimes love might take the harder choice and say, love means I'm going to feel my hard feelings right now.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit deeper that way, but I see it more as like coming into a relationship with our body. And I even like going towards body neutrality. So
Yes.
to me, like I see kind of the goal, I guess, is to come back to the place that you were when you were a kid. And some people might not even have that early of a memory, but a lot of people do, where you might just have a moment of remembering like what it was like to just be a kid in your body. Like, were you doing cartwheels? Were you swimming? Were you running? Were you playing? Were you coloring? Like, what were you doing where you weren't even thinking about your body? Your body wasn't the concern. You were just engaged in whatever it was that you found interesting, or exciting. And that's the place that I see. It's like a return to that. It's like our body is the vehicle that we have to live and move in this world. It's not the thing that defines us. It's not a task. It's not a chore. Any sort of exercise or food that we eat or anything is only ever supposed to be to support us to be able to do the things that we want to do. It's not the thing that we're doing to live life. Like I personally, I think for very few people truly that their goal in life is like to just exercise and like eat according to whatever the standards of a perfect diet is. Like I don't really think that's what most people are put on this earth for. I believe those are
Mm.
the things that just support us to be able to do the things that we actually want to do in this world. So, body positivity, to kind of come back to that other piece, how I see it and how my relationship to it is, I mean, I think it's a good thing. Like, body positivity was something that really helped me in the beginning. It was seeing, particularly it was women, seeing women who were in larger bodies, wearing bathing suits and wearing, outfits that were revealing. And of course, it's not all about like just showing your body, but because we're so starved of positive images that show a body that has fat on it seen as beautiful or glamorous, like that can be really impactful in such a
Mm.
positive way for us. So I love that, body positivity movement exists. Unfortunately, it's been kind of skewed and used in different ways by just standard diet culture. So by like fitness influencers, like
Yeah.
they'll now just say, oh, well, like now dieting's body positive. It's like, well, that's not actually true. Like
Yeah.
body
Yeah.
positive is about celebrating all bodies. And that means then all of the bodies that we don't typically see in social media or advertising or television or movies. It's saying that there's inherent worth and value to all bodies, and that we don't need to be trying to make every single body smaller and fit some kind of ideal.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And what I really loved what you said is the redefinition of love. So, body love actually is this acceptance. Body love actually is this quiet neutrality. I've been thinking and saying lately, all I want is to just not give a shit about what my body is, not in a dismissive way. My body is, the most and least important thing that I will ever have because it carries me through my life, but it needs to be less important about what shape that takes. I need to not think about it. And that reflection on, as a child, what were you doing? Were you doing cartwheels? I just have this like salient memory of doing cartwheels in my parents' living room in like a gymnastics outfit, watching Grease like every single night, and just the freedom and the intuition that comes with everything that is that really like blessed place. And somehow we take ourselves completely out of that through the growing up process and whatever it is that we kind of go through and see. And sometimes it leads to full-blown eating disorders, or just diet culture and disordered eating, however you kind of define those things. And so I want to talk a little bit about when it's related to, and I know that you've worked with clients that have passive disordered eating, things like body dysmorphia come up, where we have this really skewed vision of what we look like. And that is so intrinsically linked to eating disorders. What has been your experience with clients or yourself in terms of that misperception of what we actually look like?
What I could say that where we do see that disconnect between how we think we look and how we actually look really just comes up a lot when we look at photos. So I can say that in my own personal experience, when I was at my thinnest, I never felt like I was at my thinnest. Like I never saw that. It was only kind of years later, after I was, in more recovery from that, that I looked back at the photos and I was able to see how I actually looked. And I was just like, wow, there was no way I ever felt that I was that small. And I
Yeah.
really was quite small. So I mean, I guess that is kind of a body dysmorphic
Yeah.
way. It's really like a lens that we're looking through. It's like a frame of beliefs and judgments and ideas that we hold about our bodies and how they should be, that distort what we actually see. And so long as we tie our worth and our value and what we think we need in order to feel safe based on a body size, so long as we're not actually feeling that, then I think we're always going to see our body not as it actually is.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense? I'm not sure I
Oh,
explained that
absolutely.
clearly.
No,
Yeah.
no, you really did. And the thing that comes to mind is that this everything coming from this lens or this reference point. So, in a moment, maybe we all have some kind of dysmorphia. Like maybe we don't really ever have in ourselves this image of what we must look like. And then you mentioned photos and looking back on photos and having that more clear view. I never thought, same as you, that I was that bad or that I was that thin when I was at my thinnest and my lowest. And in time, I've had the experience then of looking back at photos from that time and feeling very embarrassed and feeling very low about just how bad I really, like how sick I looked, because we are in the eating disorder, or you're so thin and you're suppressing your weight and you don't think that you're that thin. You're not having that experience. But when you look back, as you say, then you have a more objective view. Also, you've probably renourished yourself to the extent that your brain's actually probably functioning on all cylinders and has a better way to look at things. But looking back and being like, oh my gosh, I was so, so wrong. So it's insane the way that we, look at ourselves in any given moment. As we kind of, move through getting to a body that is where it wants to live, that is just with intuitive eating and things like that, how do we move into body acceptance? Because this feels like a very big ask. What are sort of the best things that you recommend to kind of get there, especially on really, really shitty body image days?
Yeah. It really is a journey. It's not, it's, I think people often don't want to pursue this path because it is hard and it's not a quick fix. Dieting is a quick fix. What body acceptance does is it takes away the defense mechanisms that we used with dieting and has us come face to face with the feelings that are underneath that. What were we using dieting to not feel? What were we using dieting to run away from? And it's often, I mean, for everybody, it's different depending on their history and experience, but it's usually uncomfortable feelings. And a lot of times it's an association, it's that association with our worth, value, feelings of love, and body size. And I mean, eating disorders is another thing too, because there's a lot of things about control and food in there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's gonna uncover and take away, and start to actually do that work of the deeper work to find our worth and value within ourselves. So a lot of times it needs some processing, and that's again different for everybody. That's why therapy can be very helpful. Even maybe doing some work with coaching can be helpful too. But taking a look at, I find a lot of it is, what are the beliefs that we've come what did we come to believe about ourselves, about our bodies, about our worth? And it's really about worth and value and love. It's a lot of ups and downs, so in the beginning, I would say it's like you have way more bad days than you have good days. There can be a lot of crying, there can be a lot of discomfort, like you just don't feel comfortable, you feel fear, you might feel afraid. And it's staying with those feelings and keeping moving forward. It's about then not running back to the old behaviors and to keep moving through it. Something kind of practical. One of the things that an exercise that I really like to do is called, I call it the desert island, or deserted island exercise. And what it is that, you sit and you imagine yourself having grown up on a deserted island. So there's no other people around. You've never ever seen another person. You have no idea what another body looks, a human body looks like. And I say it's like a magical island. So like you were never lonely, you had all the things you liked, like everything was good, but you just never saw another human body. And to sit and meditate on that and say, well, how would I feel about my own body if I really had no concept of what another body looked like? And to kind of sit in that and connect to how you would really truly feel. And that's like, to me, the base point. That's the foundation. And most people who would do this would realize, like, well, I guess I'd actually feel okay. And it can be hard, because there's all these layers and say, yeah, but I don't know, but like, what about, the roll on my stomach? It's like, you have no idea that that's bad. Like you never, like you've never learned that there's anything right or wrong about how your body is. So then you can start to see, okay, what are all of these things that I'm thinking about my body as, good or bad or right or wrong? And where did I learn that? And is that actually true? Because again, if I'm on this deserted island, there's nobody or anybody who says that anything is good or bad. And so that's coming back now to the home. And that's always the base point. So anytime you start to criticize your body or you feel bad, it's like, come back to that base point. Like, how would I be feeling if my body was just as it is and I'm on this deserted island and I learned nothing else? So that's like one kind of practical example, but I never sugarcoat talking about it. And I know this can sound like scary for people because some people then may say, well, this just seems like it's too much and maybe I'll never be able to do it. And I would just say, no. Like, I really think you can. It's just really also all about getting support and not having to do it all at once. Like you can also, I'm a big proponent of baby steps with it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so happy that you shared the deserted island technique because I got your body acceptance little guidebook and I was going to ask you to walk us through it. So I'm so glad that you did. And that is something that at some different points when I've been sort of in that contemplation phase about recovery and about my body and being like, well, what would that mean if I gained weight? And who am I actually showing up for in this body? Like, why am I actually doing this? Why am I trying to stay small? Because if I was off on a desert island or off in another country where nobody had ever met me or knew me, even if I did see other bodies, but nobody knew me, then would I still be doing this? And I've had a really, really interesting contemplation about this. And then when I saw your desert island, I was like, okay, this is the exercise. It's to be like, if nothing else existed, why would I care about this? Or would I? And the answer, I mean, the ultimate truth to that is like, no, of course not. Like you would just be, and you wouldn't have these different attitudes and attachments and meaning about what your body meant. So that's a powerful, powerful exercise. And I would encourage everybody to sit with that one. I really want to know where you see the body acceptance movement going. And specifically, I think that we've made some great strides, for women specifically and moving along into this diet culture or away from this diet culture rather. And I realize that at a baseline, we tend not to think that men are as susceptible to diet culture or to body image issues, but I think it's actually quite underreported and underrepresented in the movement forward. Have you worked with any men, or what are your thoughts on that in terms of body image with men?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually haven't worked with any men, and just it hasn't worked that way. I think I tend to attract women anyways, just because I am a woman and I can, speak a lot from my own personal experience. I think that my personal feeling about it is, in the past, I don't think that the pressure on men was as intense. Their pressure came more from needing to be wealthy, be a provider, and what they could show that they would produce. And women, it was all about appearance and being able to attract a man, because women couldn't, it wasn't that long ago that women literally needed to be married to a man in order to secure their own survival. Most women, you could not survive in the society because you couldn't own property and you couldn't vote.
Open a bank account.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Exactly. You literally became the property of a man. So that wasn't that long ago. I mean, what was that, like 100 years ago? Like, it's not that long. So that, that way that women particularly relate to themselves and their appearance, like that is generational. I believe that that runs through the generational line. And we're really just now starting to change that. However, so now for men, I don't know if I think because things are changing, because now, like, women don't need a man in order to survive and in order to thrive and have a good life. It's also then shifted what the expectations are, I think, for men. And I think because of that, the appearance aspect of it has also shifted on to men too. Like now it's just kind of in general, this whole idea of what does a successful person look like?
Yeah.
And that includes appearance as well. And of course, for men, it's the opposite for women in the, well, not complete opposite, but it's more about muscular development and being bigger. It's still about not having any body fat, because our culture just absolutely hates body fat with a passion. So it really all is about that too. And I know that men do and can suffer from anorexia. So I have to say, I'm not like as knowledgeable about that aspect, but I do see it happening a lot for men. But where I really see it is more in men who are obsessed with, the gym and working out and getting ripped and whatnot. And they're a lot of that, again, too, I think has to do with feelings of worth and self-esteem and appearance, because with social media too, like that only exacerbates appearance, this focus of fixation on how we look and on that body image, that objectification. Because again, to come back a little bit to body image, like when we do objectify ourselves, we become like, it's just like a 2D image. Like we completely remove the person from the image. Like we don't see a whole person, we just see an image, or we project onto that image whatever we want to believe about that person, which is what we mostly do anyways. So yes, like I think it is increasing for men to be affected about this too. It's just maybe exactly how it shows up is a little bit different.
Yeah. I mean, I think also the reason that maybe people that are body acceptance coaches don't have any or as many male clients, and this was more just kind of a curiosity of mine, is because they don't think it's a problem. They think it's just how they have to be. They just think that, oh yeah, like guys just have to like look that way. And I think with a lot of mental health things, and this sort of goes outside the scope, but they're less willing to come forward because of the, bias that it's weaker or something of that nature.
And that comes, too, with the whole mental health. And like you said, they see it as a weakness to be like, to be vulnerable and to say like, actually, I'm really struggling with this. And the biggest, I think one of the biggest impediments to recovery for all people is that we have a culture that completely encourages disordered eating, disordered body image, even eating disorders. Like it's encouraged. And so it can be really difficult, like you said, to even see that there is a problem because it's become normalized.
Yeah.
So you'd ask, like, where do I see it going? And I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but my hope is that, I think that we will start to move away from this fixation on appearance and weight, but like it will take a long time. But it really does start though, just one by one. Like more and more people are starting to realize, wait, I don't I don't have to live my life like this. And also, I find what's really important is getting educated on weight as it relates to health,
Mm.
because I think the medical community is the biggest barrier right now to changing this, because our medical system is a weight-based healthcare system. As soon as they can move away from that and realize that focusing on weight, it's not the weight that is the cause of the illnesses that are usually attributed to weight. There's only a correlation, it's not causation.
Mm-hmm.
So learning the science around that can be helpful to say that, oh, so actually, like, it's okay. Now, the only, of course, caveat to that is with eating disorders, and particularly people who are very like low weight. The interesting thing is that our bodies are actually much happier and healthier having quote unquote extra weight on our body than having not enough. So we're actually in much more danger of ill health and sickness when we have too little weight on our
Mm-hmm.
bodies than we are if we have more than, that's just enough to survive it. So I feel like when we can get behind and shift the focus away from weight and just focusing it more on actually being mentally and emotionally healthy, and focusing on what makes us feel good, like what feels energetic, what feels nourished, what feels balanced, like then we're in a much more healthy state. And when we can make that shift, then I think everything will shift. I don't see I think body acceptance is going to be the way forward. I think the way that being fixated on a weight is just like an old paradigm.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, I want to make sure that we don't let you go before we ask, where can people find you, your work, and what are you working on?
Yeah, so you can find me. My website is kristinabruce.com, and I'm also kind of most active on Instagram at Kristina Bruce Coach. I also have a Facebook page as well. And really, right now, what I'm working on is I'm still kind of coming off of maternity leave because I have a baby. And I'm working right now with my private coaching clients. So I have an 8-week body acceptance coaching that I'm doing with one-on-one with clients. But I'm also starting to open up some yoga for body acceptance classes. So we actually, work on accepting our bodies through the practice of yoga and that movement. So those classes are starting to open up, and I'll be working on developing a group coaching program to hopefully launch this fall on body acceptance.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, well, everybody will have access to those links. I will put them in the show notes and all of the places where things are posted. But it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, Kristina. And the work you're doing is just so wonderful and important. And your perspective has been just wonderful, and like some really incredible, like actual practical knowledge that people can kind of walk away with. So thank you immensely for being on the podcast.
No, you're so welcome. I appreciate you having me.